Josephine Dullard was last seen in November 1995. She'd been in Dublin on a night out with friends, but missed her last bus home to Callan in County Kilkenny. Instead, she got a bus to Naas and hitched a lift to Moone in County Kildare, still over 70 kilometres from her home.
The last reported contact of 21-year-old Josephine Dullard was when it's claimed she called a friend, Mary Cullinane, at around 11:15 p.m. on Thursday last from the Kildare village of Moone.
The last thing she told her friend was that a car was stopping for her. Jojo was never heard from again. And a major investigation was launched.
It'll be a year next Friday since Jojo disappeared. Despite inquiries, searches and appeals, Gardaí have found no sign of her.
To date, we have interviewed over 2,000 people. We have taken approximately 500 statements. Searches have been carried out on 70 or more days.
Welcome to episode 30 of Radio Espial. As you will have seen from the news insert there at the top of this episode, it's Josephine Jojo Dullard, originally of Callan, County Kilkenny in Ireland, and we're looking at the case of her disappearance in the 9th of November 1995. That's the case for this episode. You had a brief from the news piece. Just before we get into the full case timeline, the analysis and some conclusions, thoughts on it, I just want to thank my recent subscribers on YouTube. You can find us there. It's very likely this is where you're watching this. So it's Mick Rooney Radio Espial on YouTube. We are also available on www.radioespial.com. Just one other thing, we do podcasts, but I tend to find they don't work very well. I continue to do them, but there's an awful lot of editing I have to do. So we are available in podcast as well, Apple, SoundCloud, multiple other channels, Spotify as well, all probably your favourites. Honestly, it doesn't work, and I think if any of you are new to the channel, you'll know why, because we do an awful lot of kind of I suppose basically show and tell, maps, inserts, diagrams, analysis, text, so you can take your time going through the case, and that really doesn't ideally work in podcast, but I still do it. I'm actually considering whether, and let me know in the comments wherever you see this, whether I should continue doing the podcasts. But primarily we're in videocast, main channel on YouTube, Mick Rooney Radio Espial, and also radioespial.com. Thank you to all my recent subscribers. I'm delighted that you could join us. Just last thing on housekeeping, it does help. You know the usual drill. I say this all the time, and I usually leave it at that then. Wherever you see this, it does help. I really appreciate the new subscribes. Notification bell if you want to know what I've uploaded going forward. Please do that. There is a community page also there on YouTube, and I generally do more casual information as to what's coming up long before the broadcasts. Generally I do about 2, maybe 3 of these a month. Generally it's about 2 because they take an awful lot of work to do. Look, what you're here for is the case of Josephine Jojo Dullard and her disappearance. So let's get on with that. So I'm going to do the background to the case. Okay, let's just quickly run through it. Josephine Jojo Dullard, 21, of Callan, County Kilkenny, was living in Harold's Cross, County Dublin, when she went missing on the 9th of November 1995. She had recently finished a beauty therapy course after finding it very difficult to juggle work and college. On the day she disappeared, she was planning on moving from Dublin back to Callan, Kilkenny, for good. She'd missed her last bus to Callan and had to take another bus to Naas, County Kildare instead. She was last known to be in the Moone area of County Kildare while hitchhiking home to Kilkenny. She'd been driven from the Naas area to Kilcullen, County Kildare, and then on to Moone. She was last seen using a payphone in Moone, and through telephone records, Gardaí, that's Irish police for my international viewers, found out the call was made at 11:37 p.m. to Dullard's friend Mary Cullinane. She ended the call as she was about to enter another car. There was also an unconfirmed sighting of her walking along the road in Castledermot, County Kildare as well. The driver of the car or other occupants have never been identified. Now, her missing description initially in the first week or 10 days was given out as, obviously we know the name, Josephine Jojo Dullard. By the way, I should insert, Jojo was like a nickname for her, and that's what she went by. And if you're looking elsewhere for this case, generally you will find her name officially as, in regards to this case, as Jojo Dullard. Her date of birth, 25th of January 1974, so she was aged 21 when she disappeared, and 9th of November 1995, which was a Thursday. We'll see more about that on the timeline. She was 5'4", that's 163 centimetres, medium build, dark shoulder length hair. On the day of her disappearance, she was wearing a dark anorak type jacket. Remember, it's November, so we're getting into the winter months in Ireland. A white top, either black or light blue jeans, black boots, a black Sanyo Walkman, matching earphones, and a small leather rucksack. Okay, we're going to take an insert, start of the program, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get really deeply down into the actual timeline. And for my new subscribers, this is what we do when we do a case. We drill right down into the timeline. That's coming up now. Okay, so let's look at the timeline itself. So, again, picture yourself back. This is Thursday, the 9th of November, 1995. So, Jojo Dullard leaves her family home in Callan, County Kilkenny, Ireland at 8:30 a.m. on the morning of the November 9th to travel by bus to Dublin. She's collecting her final social welfare payment from the Harold's Cross post office. Jojo has been living in the Dublin area for nearly 2 years, juggling a beauty therapy course at college and a waitressing job in a Dublin city pub. That was currently them, which she'd actually done a number of waitressing jobs at the time when she was balancing up college. However, the combination of both has proved too much. In recent weeks, she has ended college and informed her family that she has decided to relocate back to Callan, Kilkenny, where her family live. She and her close friend, Mary Cullinane, have managed to obtain more secure jobs waitressing in a pub in Callan. The security and familiarity appealed to the 21-year-old Jojo at the time, having spent much of the past 2 years working in various pubs throughout Dublin City. Jojo grew up all her life in Callan, Kilkenny, and has 3 sisters and 1 brother. Sadly, her father died before she was born, and she lost her mother when she was about, I think it was around 9 years of age. Today will be her last trip to her flat to pick up a few remaining belongings. Once she picks up her social welfare payment from Harold's Cross post office, she intends meeting up with some friends in Dublin City and returning to Callan that evening. So again, just to clarify, she'd recently ended her job in Dublin waitressing. She'd also recently ended her her time at her flat in the Harold's Cross area, which is an area of the South Dublin suburb. So she was picking up her last social welfare unemployment payment, and that was really her main purpose, being in Dublin to that day. So much of her move and relocation had already occurred in the previous 2 or 3 weeks. Most of our morning will be taken up with travelling on buses. One to the central Busaras station in Dublin City, and then another bus to her flat in the South Dublin suburb of Harold's Cross. She will then have to travel back to the city centre. So she had set out on the bus from Kilkenny, arrived in Dublin, we think around 10:30 a.m, went about her business when she travelled by another bus to Harold's Cross, and she heads back into the main city centre now. So again, Thursday, we're at around 1 to 2 p.m, and this is only approximate because we're not certain. We can't be certain about the exact movements of Jojo that morning, but we know she did return to her flat for the remaining belongings and pick up her social welfare payment. Free for the rest of the day, she decides to meet with some friends just off Grafton Street and stays in their company all afternoon. Jojo is outgoing and has a wide circle of friends, both in their hometown of Callan and in Dublin. Her choice of a beauty therapy course and waitressing was well suited to her character. Jojo's initial plans were to visit a pub known as Bruxelles on Harry Street, just off the main Grafton Street thoroughfare. It's a pub she had frequented many times while living in Dublin. She hopes to see some of her friends there. It's a regular haunt for the 21-year-old and her friends. We know that this visit to Bruxelles isn't a formal pre-plan or arrangement. It's more a casual visit in the hope of meeting some friends there. There has been some media speculation that she went there specifically to meet a person, but I believe this to be somewhat unfounded, and it was more chance, and there is no evidence that it was anything more than a hopeful casual visit for her last day in Dublin. If she is to make it, and this is really important, if she is to make it back to her family home in Callan, Kilkenny, she knows she has to be back at the central Dublin Busaras station for the at least the last direct provincial bus later that evening. Now that journey, and we're going to show you some of the locations on maps, that journey back to Kilkenny it's no mean feat. Like, if you don't drive and you're depending on public transport, it's a significant journey of nearly 150 kilometres. So that's roughly 2 hours by road. Now in this map that I'm showing you on screen, and I don't expect it, just to give you a general idea, this is effectively the river flowing through the area you see there. That's the River Liffey, which runs through the centre of Dublin. So we have North Dublin up here, and we have South Dublin here. Now this top circle here is Busaras. This is where the main Dublin bus centre is. This is for very much people who travel up to Dublin from outside of not just Dublin city itself, but outside from other provinces, from Connacht, Munster, wider Leinster areas, Ulster. So this is a main thoroughfare station. It's not a station for localised movement of buses. It's for provincial buses around the country. Now, that's where she arrived that morning. She then travelled off to the south suburb of Harold's Cross, and then she returned back into the main city centre, and she travelled here after lunch around 1 to 2 p.m. to Bruxelles, which is a bar, a pub, and it's just off. This is Grafton Street, if you can see it clearly as I'm following the arrow, and Harry Street is just a side street off it. I'm actually quite familiar with this pub in Dublin when I lived in Dublin. And in fact, I would have frequented this around the similar times in the early and mid 1990s as Jojo did. It's very much a thriving spot, particularly for young people and music orientated people as well. Jojo is delighted to discover that one of her friends is working behind the bar at Bruxelles that day when she arrives. Around 2:30 p.m. that afternoon, Jojo is sitting at the bar while her friend serves customers. So her friend is behind the bar working there. The two chat about what they've been up to in recent days and weeks. At around 2:30 p.m, an ex-boyfriend of Jojo's arrives in, and they too sort of join in chatting. According to retired Garda detective Alan Bailey, based on witness accounts, Jojo and her ex-boyfriend somewhat that afternoon rekindled their flame. After a few drinks, Jojo is happy and she's comfortable in company. Now this is significant. She decides, according to witnesses, to change her plans and instead spend the night in Dublin. Now look, other people have speculated. I'm not really going to go down that road. I don't know the full circumstances of what made her exactly change her plans. It's been suggested, and I try to avoid speculation that we're not certain of, that perhaps having rekindled this relationship with an ex-boyfriend on the spur of the moment that day, by chance, or by planning, but I don't see any evidence that there was planning. I think this is literally a meeting of the pair by chance. However, things developed, and Jojo has decided she's remaining in Dublin. There has been some suggestion that were they planning maybe getting a hotel room. Remember, Jojo had just got her social welfare payment that morning from Harold's Cross. That is a possibility, but I've yet to see absolute evidence that that's what the plan was and the case was. But certainly she's changed her plans and decided she's not going back to Callan, Kilkenny that evening on the bus. She's going to stay, and her arrangement is to remain in Dublin and perhaps then travel after that the following day. Between 4 and 7 p.m, those plans start to get a little bit scuppered, because Jojo's ex-boyfriend's current girlfriend at that time shows up in Bruxelles. So you can see that there are niches of people who went to that pub, that establishment, who were friends, who knew each other, boyfriends, girlfriends. So it has its pockets of quite niche groups of people who go there regularly. Unfortunately, a brief argument ensues, and Jojo's ex-boyfriend leaves with his current girlfriend. So things now are slightly different. But this sequence of casual happenings and events will have ominous repercussions over the following 8 hours. It will also lead to one of Ireland's most high-profile disappearances, which in turn would become a murder investigation years later. And yet the movements and events of Josephine Jojo Dullard that evening, and whatever fate lay ahead for her, was only just beginning. Let's take an insert.
I recall meeting Jojo in Bruxelles bar on the 9th of November 1995, or indeed if they met her while she was travelling from Dublin towards her home in Callan, in particular Bossoras, Bruxelles, en route to Naas, Kilcullen and also Moone, where she was last seen alive. And finally, I'm appealing to anybody who has any information pertinent to this inquiry to come forward. I know it's 25 years have elapsed, but it's very important if they come forward, examine their conscience and come forward and let us know what they have in relation to this investigation.
Okay, so that's a reflection of the appeal. I want to stress that that came, I think that particular appeal came many years later, as the case kind of got revived as it were. I'm going to be honest, really at the time, and I remember this, really at the time in the 1990s and right into the early 2000s, there was a tendency for this case not to quite have the profile that it deserved, considering the amount of years that had passed. And what you saw there in that clip, that was actually, I believe that was 2020, and it was where Gardaí were starting to look at other cases of women that had disappeared in the more wider general area of Leinster, and kind of they started to think, was Jojo's case linked to some of these other women that disappeared? Without that, I'm honestly, I have to say, I wonder, would this case have even got the same profile by then? Because certainly in the previous years it wasn't. And in fact, we'll go on and touch on that, because the family became very, very frustrated, definitely after the first 2 to 3 years. Really by the second or third year, by around 98, 99, 2000, the family really were becoming increasingly frustrated at the lack of movement or any news on the investigation. So we're back to that Thursday. We're now into the night of Thursday, the 9th of November 1995. So we're at 7 to 9 p.m. Okay? Jojo's still pretty much in Bruxelles. She's been there throughout the entire afternoon into the evening. But she finds herself right back with the same intentions as she had that morning when she stepped off the bus in Busaras in Dublin around 10:30 a.m. It's time to go home to Callan, okay? But her bus to Kilkenny has now long since departed. This will be a journey Jojo has taken before, late in the evening. Now, it's hard to accept that she would not have been aware of the late bus timings to Kilkenny. Exactly why she delayed her departure from the Harry Street and Grafton Street areas across to Busaras is unknown. I think I've timed that at around, I believe, 19 to 23, 24 minutes. It really depends on what pace you're walking. But I guess if you're rushing to try and get a bus, we'd be touching at the 19, 20 minutes. It's certainly not something, if you only had half an hour to spare, you'd be running pretty tight, because you got to get there, get your ticket, get yourself organised, get on the bus. We're starting a very complex journey that will involve multiple towns, vehicles, phone calls and eyewitnesses. And some of those areas I want you to take a look at on this map. I hope you can see this clearly. So I'm not going to touch upon the up here at the very top of the map where you might be able to make out Rockcool, but at the beyond here, at that top circle, Dublin is not in this. Okay, we're now into Kildare. Okay, so Jojo gets on a bus in the late evening, early night, excuse me, and she's going to travel through Naas, that we know of, and we'll find out why we know that. She's going to travel to Kilcullen, which is slightly further south, and we know she got there. And she'll travel to Moone, and we know she got there. And we'll touch upon why we know. There's a place further south called Castledermot. This is where things become a little bit more uncertain. Where's her destination? It's way, way diagonally down here. Do you see right down here? That's where Callan, Kilkenny is. So you can see this is quite a considerable distance. As I say, it's 150 kilometres. 9 p.m. Busaras, Dublin City. We do know that Jojo did eventually make it to Busaras station that evening, sometime after 9 p.m. Realising that she had missed the last bus to Kilkenny, she instead boards a bus to Naas. In other words, her thinking is, I can get at least a bit closer to home, but boy, she's still a hell of a long way from home. At least it will take her a little closer. But Naas town is still 110 kilometres away from Callan, County Kilkenny, her final destination that night. 10 p.m, 10:50 p.m. How do we know she got to Naas? Jojo steps off the bus in the town of Naas, Kildare, sometime not long after 10 p.m. A bus driver routed on that shift is adamant that he had some brief conversations with Jojo at the start and end of the bus journey. He refers to her as a woman with a Kilkenny accent and fitting her description. He recounts that she seemed tired and he had to wake her because she was travelling as far as the bus was going in Naas. Excuse me. Jojo manages to hitch a lift from a motorist in Naas, who later told on Gardaí Síochána, the Irish police, that he dropped Jojo off in Kilcullen, County Kildare, near the edge of the main motorway. He was an elderly man, and in his police statements he recounted that he was somewhat concerned a young lady was hitching lifts so late at night, but he could only take her as far as Kilcullen, that's in Kildare, and she should try and get some accommodation there. So we know she's now gone from the bus to Naas to this elderly gentleman who gives her a lift because she's now turned to hitchhiking. At 11:15 p.m, Jojo hitchhikes a second lift from another motorist from Kilcullen to Moone village, Kildare. A young driver spots her hitching at the side of the motorway. Presumably, well, we know from the Gardaí statement that the elderly man gave that he dropped her off at the side of the motorway. This is where the younger driver then takes it on and recounts that's actually where I picked her up from. He spotted her, he stopped, he gave her a lift, but he explained that he could only take her a short distance south. And he's also concerned about her safety at that night, because it's 17 kilometres from Kilcullen to Moone. So she's only doing this journey in sort of short bursts, and she's not any significant distance closer to home. 11:35 p.m. Question being, how do we know she got to Moone, other than the eyewitness account, who the young driver who dropped her there? We know it through telephony records and witness statements. It is known that Joe was indeed in the village of Moone around 11:35 p.m. At 11:37, from those telephony records, 2 minutes after we believe she arrived in Moone, she recounts the event. She phones her friend from a public telephone box at 11:37. She recounts the events of the day to her friend and explains to Mary Cullinane, that she is currently hitching lifts after missing her last direct bus to Kilkenny. Now, I've seen a number of photographs and images of the telephone box. Ironically, a lot of them are silly because they're modern day iterations of this phone box. This is the original phone box, and there's actually a plaque that I believe this is the woman in red is Mary Phelan. I think this is Martin, her husband, and her 2 kids, and they, along with the other siblings, erected this sort of memorial headstone beside the phone box. In other photographs I've seen the phone box, but of course it's one of those modern aluminium phone boxes. This, I think, was taken 3 years later when it was erected. During this conversation, this is the conversation from this phone box between Jojo, Dullard and her close friend Mary Cullinane. During the conversation, she interrupts it briefly while still holding the connected call, and she indicates to Mary that she has to go. There's a kind of interchange on the phone of silence for half a minute. She comes back and says, "Oh, I've got to go. There's a car stopped. I've got a lift," and she'll ring Mary at the next drop-off point. Now, I found that interesting because it suggests that whoever is picking her up in that car, she said wherever the next drop-off point is. So, presumably, she already knows she's got a lift, and she doesn't expect to get the full way to Callan. It's wherever the next drop-off point is, whatever's feasible for somebody hitchhiking and somebody who can give her a lift. This is the last actual confirmed sighting and location of Josephine Jojo Dullard. It is around the last time anyone known, witness or friend, ever spoke to Jojo. Now, there will be some other circumspect witness eye accounts that we're not certain of. Between 11:40 p.m. and 12 a.m, that's Thursday into the Friday morning, the 10th of November 1995. Around this time, an eyewitness recounts later to police that a woman answering Jojo's description was last seen leaning in the back door of a dark-coloured Toyota Carina type car in Castledermot. The driver or occupants of this Toyota Carina car have never been traced. Another witness stated that while she was driving through the village of Moone, that would have been the previous village, at the time Jojo was believed to be there on the phone call, she spotted a woman matching Jojo's description running from the village's only phone box into the back seat of a four-door car. The witness wasn't certain of the type of car. One thing the witness was sure of was that the woman got into the back seat of the car, suggesting there was at least two other people in the car, in the front of the car. There were further sightings of a woman similar to Jojo in Castledermot, County Kildare. This is 8 kilometres farther south from Moone, at around midnight on the same night, Thursday the 9th of November. But this sighting and some of the other sightings cannot be corroborated with other evidence. 12 a.m. onwards. At this point, our timeline is becoming more and more uncertain. We're into the vagaries of eyewitness reports, but no other evidence to corroborate them. Eyewitness timings start to conflict with other known locations of Jojo that evening. Moone, County Kildare, will for now remain the likely last proof of life of Josephine Jojo Dullard. But how far on south did Jojo go from the village of Moone? Did she make her way to Castledermot in this reported Toyota Carina? Was the two vehicles seen in the one in Moone and the one in Castledermot? Is it the same vehicle, or is it just unrelated? This trip by car is about 8 kilometres and would take about 10 to 12 minutes at the time, 1995. A lot of people do this and they forget roads change over time, and they're looking at newer roads, better roads, and that must be borne in mind. It's still a lot, I think, in between the phone call at 11:37 and then to be in Castledermot at midnight. It's possible, but I think even on those roads at that time, that's travelling at some speed. We know Jojo could not have left Moone Village before 11:37 p.m. because she's on the phone, but perhaps on or soon after 11:40 p.m. because she was on a public phone box call with Mary. So if she did travel by car to Castledermot, then she could not have been there before at least 11:50 p.m. or a few minutes later. So midnight sounds a lot closer to the time she might get there. Even 11:50 seems to be pushing it, and unfortunately we've got eyewitnesses saying she was already in Castledermot before, so this is where the problems start to arise. Remember, the telephony details from the phone box don't lie. Eyewitness accounts of what exact time it was, they can be less certain exactly. Numerous witnesses came forward to the Gardaí stating that they had seen a woman matching Jojo's description walking the main street of the Castledermot village close to midnight. I bet it was pretty close to midnight, if not midnight. The time frame from the witnesses' accounts do match with Jojo being driven from Moone to Castledermot. But there are also other eyewitness statements from Castledermot that are too early and conflict with the Moone phone call. A man in Castledermot village said he spotted a woman matching Jojo's description walking along the main road in the Carlow direction as he entered a fast food outlet. He recalled this to be a short time before midnight. So we're into the early hours of Friday, the 10th of November 1995. We're after midnight now. Jojo doesn't get home to Callan. Mary, Cullinane, hasn't heard any more. None of her friends have heard any more. By 6 p.m, Jojo's siblings, her sisters and her brother, all confirm not seeing or hearing from her, even though she was expected home. They make a formal missing person report to the local police station. The early stages of the investigation are somewhat slow, and it will be a week before it really becomes a national case in the media. Okay, let's take an insert from Jojo's family. Okay, so we're on to autumn 1996. So this is 1 year after Jojo's disappearance. A taxi driver from County Waterford, 90 kilometres south of Moone, Kildare, comes forward to Gardaí claiming that on the night Jojo disappeared, as he was just outside of the village of Kilmacow, Kilkenny, he spotted a car on the side of the road, parked up. He noticed a man urinating beside the car and a young woman matching Jojo's description leap out of the car through a rear door and ran out onto the road. She was running barefoot, and he then noticed another man exit the car and pull the woman back into it. The car soon sped away with all three in it. He believed the car to be a red Ford Sierra with British registration plates. This doesn't seem to fit with the dark coloured Toyota Carina spotted in Castledermot 83 kilometres away, and all this around the same time window. Now, in fairness, if people are not familiar with cars, I guess could a red Ford Sierra be confused with a Toyota Carina at the time? I do have photographs as examples, not the actual cars, and you can, in a while, you can take a look at those and make your own mind up. The Moone and Castledermot witness sighting reports seem to conflict with the Kilmacow sighting, and all in a very short space of time, depicting very different circumstances. One, an eager hitchhiker looking for a lift on a phone call at 11:37 p.m, and another 83 to 90 kilometres away of a frantic barefoot lady. Incidentally, I should have put this up on a map, but Kilmacow is considerably further. I think it's southwest away from Callan, so it's actually further, I think, south. So you know, this account doesn't really seem to make sense, and we'll later learn why we believe it doesn't make sense. It's 90 kilometres south and an hour's drive from Moone village. So if it's the same Toyota Carina spotted in Moone and Castledermot between 11:40 p.m. and midnight, and the barefoot woman spotted in Kilmacow have to have been closer to 1 a.m. to fit with the Moone and Castledermot sightings. Do you follow me? If the Kilmacow is that further south and further away from Moone and Castledermot, it has to be considerably later in the evening. As with all eyewitness statement sightings, they must be tested and corroborated. Another example is a truck driver who contacted Gardaí in 2021 and said he saw a woman running naked and screaming through the Kildare village of Moone on the night of Jojo Dullard's disappearance. Initially, it was accepted as credible, but the Gardaí Serious Crimes Review Team, that's the GSCRT, would later rule it out. This is from the statement account of the guy. I was only a chap at the time, and there was a woman there running, naked in the street, screaming. He was travelling in the truck with his boss, and when he stopped at the roadside, his boss got out and ran after the girl. But the more he went after her, the more she ran. The truck driver immediately phoned Gardaí from a phone box in Moone, totally understandable, likely the very same one that Jojo would use more than half an hour later, and the Gardaí dispatched a unit to investigate. He recounted in his statement that this occurred at around 11 p.m. Do you see where our conflict is? He was later informed that the incident was investigated and the woman was not related to the case of missing Jojo Dullard. Again, odd as eyewitness sightings are, it was ruled out. When Garda Síochána learned some really hard lessons about eyewitness statements in the Annie McCarrick case, which I've already covered, and how far it can lead an investigation down rabbit holes and lengthy sidetracks. Most eyewitnesses are well-meaning. In their world, the grass is green and the sky is blue. Mr. Darcy was on O'Toole's Hardware at 4 p.m. That's it. He was 6 feet away from me. I know it. I saw him. Until CCTV footage emerges of Mr. Darcy walking into the local cinema with his grandson at 3:59 p.m, 15 kilometres away from O'Toole's Hardware. And I see that an awful lot with eyewitness statements. They have to be corroborated, first of all, to be accepted, or otherwise you're just going down rabbit holes. 1998. Family members erect. You saw it in the earlier photograph with, I think, Mary Phelan in that red coat beside the old phone box. That's where that picture was. It was representing this erection of the memorial stone in Moone village at the public phone box that Gardaí state is the last known proof of life of Jojo Dullard. 98 to 2017, the family of Jojo become more frustrated with the police investigation. They're disturbed about an abortion Jojo had prior to her disappearance, and that news of this has been leaked to the media. To them, it seems the police seem to be using the media tabloids to blacken Jojo's name as some sort of drug-taking tomboy. They also learned that a potential suspect in the case who may have chanced upon Jojo that evening is being protected due to political family connections. All of these allegations by family members emanate from a meeting they had with a senior police officer of Garda Síochána. In the following years, the family hired their own private detective. Around 2006 to 2007, still frustrated with the police investigation going nowhere, members of Jojo's family agreed to take part in an episode of a British psychic TV programme called Psychic Private Eyes, and presented by three spiritualists, Colin Fry, Tony Stockwell and TJ Higgs. I think anybody familiar with TV psychics will be very much familiar with those three people. Jojo's sister Mary Phelan said of the psychics, "They were so strong about it and seemed to feel so definite about it that they really gave me some hope. The truth about Jojo is going to come out. Too many people know what happened for it not to." The psychics said they believed Jojo was murdered by a man who raped her and strangled her. They said Jojo managed to scratch her killer's face, leaving a scar. Mary Phelan claims that she hired a private detective to investigate the man she believes killed her sister, and the detective reported back that he had a raw scar on his face. She said, the private detective. She said, "The things they knew that they shouldn't have known had me convinced." TJ Higgs said, "My brother Tom was talking to her from the spirit world. Tom died just a few months ago and no one knows about that. She described him in a way that she couldn't have. It was so true." Look, I understand the frustrations of families of missing loved ones, but more often than not, going down these kind of routes simply compound and they confuse an investigation, notwithstanding the general public, who the police are looking for reliable information from. And worse, it can actually hamper or even damage any future investigation and criminal case. Mary Phelan, sadly, who spent more than 22 years of her life searching for her sister Jojo, died in April 2018 at her home in Cuffs Grange, County Kilkenny, after a short illness. She did not live to see closure or justice in the case of her missing sister. October the 19th, 2020. Following a GSCRT, that's the Garda Serious Crimes Investigation Team, and as well as another cold case review team that was looking at a multiple number of cases, Irish police announced that the case of Josephine Jojo Dullard has been upgraded to a murder investigation. In and around that same time, or slightly more recently, we also heard that police also upgraded the Annie McCarrick case to a murder investigation. Let's just hear a qualifier insert for that.
Almost 25 years have elapsed now since Josephine Dullard disappeared from Moone village at 11:37 p.m. on the 9th of November in 1995. During the intervening period, this matter was classified as a missing person, and we had an investigation team established with local members from the Garda Síochána here in Kildare. In the interim, in February of this year, the Serious Crime Review Team, under the direction of Detective Superintendent McTiernan, commenced an ongoing review of the investigation to date. We are satisfied as a result of our inquiries and those of the Serious Crime Review Team that Josephine Dullard came to harm on the night in question in Moone, and we are reclassifying this investigation to that of murder.
On the 25th anniversary, media continued to speculate that Jojo was part of an Irish vanishing triangle of missing women, possibly the victim of a serial killer operating over many years since the very early 1990s. Once again, as in so many cases, no actual evidence is presented by media sources to substantiate these claims and headlines. Yes, they talk about people like Larry Murphy, maybe he was living in the area, or he was living close to this victim or that victim. But increasingly, when I look at all these missing women and so-called vanishing triangle cases, increasingly I find that when you actually look into the Garda investigation case, some of them already have excluded, be it Larry Murphy or anybody else, and already have suspects. It's just that they don't have enough information to form a proper prosecution case to the DPP. But so this whole vanishing triangle thing has just come out of nowhere, and it's often linking cases that have no actual proper connection. October 2021, Garda investigating the disappearance and murder of Deirdre Jacob, one of the so-called vanishing triangle women, begins searching a remote wooded area after a cold case review team found that unusual activity was spotted in the location on the evening Deirdre vanished over 20 years ago. However, detectives are also looking for any evidence relating to the disappearance of another woman in Leinster, including other women in Leinster, including Jojo Dullard. Jojo's sister Kathleen Bergen states to media that Gardaí told her family the search was taking place on the back of information around Deirdre Jacob's disappearance. She said, "Because of the close proximity of where it is to Moone, we're praying for that little chance that may be able to find Jojo. You never know what they may find, but our thoughts and prayers with Deirdre's family and friends. We're praying this lead will lead to answers for them. We can never say any of the cases were connected. We don't know. We still have a little bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, if they find Deirdre, it will help another case." Ultimately, like many previous historic cases and searches, nothing is found relating to the case of either Deirdre Jacob or Jojo Dullard. Okay, let's take another insert, and this is the sister of Jojo Dullard, Kathleen Bergen.
But as the years have gone by, after this length of time, we have known in our hearts and accepted that she's not alive, and because Jo would be the type of person that would she'd phone you, she'd get word back to you somewhere, and she wouldn't want to worry you, and we know something sinister happened to her that night. Like back then, people told me it was a different Ireland back then, and there were no mobile phones, but she got to the phone box in Moone, and it's from there we're trying to put the pieces of the jigsaw together, and we know somebody has information, and we're appealing for them now today to come forward and help us. Maybe their circumstances have changed after all this time, and we're praying that they'll find the courage and the strength to come forward and reach out and help Jojo come home.
Okay, on to our conclusions and just some general analysis and my own thoughts. This is a complex case, notwithstanding the 28 years that have elapsed and all the known locations Jojo passed through on the day of her disappearance. What is clear is that Josephine Jojo Dullard was alive around 11:40 p.m. on Thursday, November the 9th, 1995. But she lightly met her demise and was murdered soon after, on the very early hours of Friday, November the 10th, at the hands of an opportunistic killer or killers. Let's first kind of compress and consider what we have reviewed together. In any timeline and understanding, we must place ourselves back in the actual time of the case and not impose assumptions or views or morals of life and behaviour formed in hindsight. I've made this point on a number of recent cases I've covered. The events of November 1995 were of their time. Mobile phones were not widely used in Ireland by many people. I was an early adopter of mobile phones, but I remained the exception to the rule. Hitchhiking was still a common thing to see on roads in and out of major cities and rural areas of Ireland, particularly if someone grew up in a rural area. That's just how people adapted to an Ireland with a long-standing poor transport infrastructure. We must not make personal judgments of someone based on this. Even today, 28 years later, Ireland still has a commuting population of students and young adults who work in major cities but travel at least once or twice a week back to their rural homes and families. Historically, and still currently, this pattern still exists in cases that arise where people are living in flats, bedsits, college dorms. That said, I thought it significant that at least 2 eyewitnesses who gave Jojo a lift on the evening of November the 9th, 1995 later expressed concerns to police about her journey and predicament. But we mustn't engage in victim blaming and parade our sensible adult hats, forgetting that we were also all young and we got ourselves into precarious predicaments we might have thought better of later on reflection. From police files, statements and the case details in the public domain, I note the following. Jojo frequented areas where she was known, even on her late night journey home. She stuck to the most direct route home without public transport and reported into her friend Mary, detailing her intentions and previous activities that day. This is not the pattern of somebody who wants to just disappear into the ether of their own free will. I'm also left wondering if this wasn't the first time that Jojo had attempted a return to Callan, Kilkenny without a bus service late at night. And to her, such a hitchhiking journey wasn't entirely unusual, and she did not see the obvious dangers in it at the time. If she was safe before, sure, she'd be safe now. From crucial witnesses, Jojo was clearly determined to get back home to Callan that night. At several points of her journey, from the moment she left Bruxelles in Dublin City, she had options to remain in Dublin or stop off somewhere for that evening. Remember, she just received a social welfare payment that morning from the post office in cash. There are lots of eyewitness accounts in this case, several hundred statements taken over years, more than 2,000 people interviewed. Some are relevant, some clearly are not. Her meetings with key friends and witnesses are critical, people who knew her or simply met her that night for the first time. What doesn't help is the multitude of other eyewitness reports who did not know Jojo, but just followed the line of, I saw somebody like her, I think it was her, but I only saw her in the distance, can't be certain. But either sightings or timings cannot be corroborated with known locations and case facts. The 11:30 p.m. phone call from the phone box in Moone remains the last verifiable proof of life. Nothing can supersede that unless it can be corroborated. There's no yeah but no but in a criminal investigation. There must be credible and verifiable proof that Jojo made it to Castledermot or further on to Carlow or anywhere else. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant. Now, just some disclosure. This case has been the subject of entirely false witness reports. For legal reasons, I'm not naming those people and I'm not getting into too much detail about it. But it's disturbing that individuals, they know who they are, would provide clearly false information to the family of Jojo and the Irish police, and then later have to retract those statements when proven wrong by the Garda Serious Crimes Review team and later cold case teams. Cases like this, years old, are complex enough, and far too often Garda Síochána don't get a free pass either. They make mistakes. Retired Gardaí also run to the family and media, when they have their books and their unconfirmed tidbits of information long after they are out of active duty service and have zero direct involvement in the current ongoing case or case reviews or cold case reviews. Now, my final thoughts are Jojo Dullard disappeared somewhere between Moone Village and Castledermot. Jojo changed her plans 3 times that day between 8:30 a.m. and 9 p.m. when she returned back at Busaras. Friends might have known her intentions that day at specific times, but they changed again and again. Jojo Dullard's abduction and likely murder sometime after 12 a.m. on November the 10th was not planned by anyone she knew. It was opportunistic. And I want to mention something else which I think is important. Both of the drivers who gave Jojo a lift on her journey that night from Naas to Kilcullen, then onto Moone, have faced public rumour and idle and malicious whispers. It should be remembered that both drivers came forward and have been interviewed by Garda Síochána and have been eliminated. Their gestures of public assistance got Jojo safely to Moone by 11:35 p.m. We know that because she's on the phone call with Mary Cullinane at 11:37 p.m. It is the persons unknown after that from Moone Village onwards who have not come forward and been eliminated from the investigation. This is a case of cruel opportunism. Tired, frustrated and vulnerable, Jojo risked one more hitchhike too many that night. But like so many cases, people were directly involved in her movements beyond Moone Village and for their own reasons have not come forward. Identifying the occupants of the dark-coloured Toyota Creamy is the key to this case. If they too were simply assisting her, like the 2 other previous hitchhiking drivers, in an awkward predicament, they would have long come forward and confirmed Jojo's last known place she was dropped off, be it Castledermot or farther on towards Kilkenny. I said earlier, I'd let you see, I want to stress these are just 2 sample library photographs. I'm sure these cars have long seen the scrapyard. They're from the early 1990s. The top is, I think it's a slightly darker wine-coloured Toyota Carina. The bottom one is the red Ford Sierra. you can make your own mind up as to whether people might confuse these cars. I can understand people not familiar too much with cars and not into cars, how they might, confuse them maybe if they were in different locations. I know a lot of people would say, no, you wouldn't confuse those cars at the time. But that's let me know in the comments. That's open. It was dark. It's possible. But was the car in Moone the same car that was in Castledermot? I don't know. This is where the case is after 28 years, and there looks to be no immediate conclusion coming soon. Anyone with information about Jojo's disappearance can contact the National Irish Missing Persons Helpline. There's the number. There will also be other direct numbers I'm going to give you in a short insert at the end of this episode, which is coming up now. Look, I don't have any more to say other than thank you for joining me for this case. Obviously, if there's any further developments in this case, like all the other cases I cover, I will update you. But if you do have the information, don't be reluctant. Please come forward. The contact info is coming up. One last thing on housekeeping. Please, let's not get into crazy, wild speculation in the comments, and be respectful. That's the case of Jojo Dullard. I'll update it if I have any more information or anything more comes out. Take care. God bless. I'll see you in the next case.